Hallo zusammen. I don't know if all you guys know this, but The Model by Kraftwerk is a German song in its original form. As a German who primarily knows the German version and not really like the English version at all, I don't think. I have listened to it once or twice, but that was about it. I always wondered, okay, what do they have in common? What are the similarities? And what are the differences? And how can we learn some interesting things about the German language and how it works with those things and that knowledge? Let's check that out. So the way I'm gonna do it is I'm gonna be talking about the German lyrics. I'm also gonna compare them to the English version of the song. And I'm also gonna give my literal English translation of the German lyrics. And then we're gonna see how much of the English version is similar to the original German version or maybe not at all. Who knows? Das Model is the fourth song on Kraftwerk's seventh album, Die Menschmaschine, also known as The Man Machine in English, which was released in 1978. It was a major success for the electronic music pioneers from Germany, which I've also talked about in another video, by the way. So check it out in the end card if you're interested in finding out more about Kraftwerk. Despite having been released as a single in 1978, it only became an international hit in 1981 when it was released in the UK in an English version as a B-side of the Computer Love single, which itself is an English version of the original German song Computerliebe. After that, it got released as a standalone English single by EMI, a step the band itself wasn't pushing for though. Gotta say, I'm really impressed with the song's overall success, not just in Germany but also in the UK for instance and worldwide, considering it's not your typical pop song. I mean, it's poppy, it has a catchy melody and everything and hooks, but it doesn't really have a chorus that is sung at least. There is this melodic hook that could be interpreted as the chorus, but actually the song only exists of verses, which is fine by me because they are awesome, and we're gonna find out why. The song begins with the first verse. Sie ist ein Model und sie sieht gut aus. Ich nehme sie heute gerne mit zu mir nach Haus. Sie wirkt so kühl, an sie kommt niemand ran. Doch vor der Kamera, da zeigt sie, was sie kann. One major term is the feminine personal pronoun in the third person singular, sie. Don't confuse this with the formal form of address in German though, which is sie. Same pronunciation, but the formal form of address is always capitalized. And there is another linguistic detail about this term, which makes the comparison of both versions interesting for language learners. The English version of the first verse goes like this. She's a model and she's looking good. I'd like to take her home, that's understood. She plays hard to get, she smiles from time to time. It only takes a camera to change her mind. You may have noticed that in German, the mentioned personal pronoun referring to her remains sie in all lines, whereas in English, you'd switch to her at times. That switch up is related to a change in case. We have to distinguish between the nominative singular case, sie, she, and the accusative singular case, sie, her. This also correlates with a change in perspective. The first line is a rather distant explanation of the female model, and the second line is a way closer description of the lyrical I's intentions, which also involves the accusative case. Of course, the English version also tries to come up with rhyming couples as well, so that explains looking good, understood. However, the phrasal differences already begin in the second line, which is where my rather literal English translation of the German lyrics come into play. She is a model and she looks good. I like to take her home with me today. She seems so cool, no one can touch her. But in front of the camera, she shows what she can do. The cool in line 3 could be comprehended as awesome, but in this case it actually means kühl, as in a cool temperature, a relatively distant, self-assured or even cold or cold-hearted demeanor. In terms of linguistic efficiency, meaning being able to express something with just a few letters or words, the German preposition for in line 4 is a good example. In English, you'd have to use the preposition in front of, 3 words versus 3 letters in this case. It's die Kamera, singular, die Kameras, plural, the camera. And it may even be easier for you to memorize that term once you know that the emphasis is basically the same. It's the first syllable. Kamera, camera. Kind of similar, once again, that typical CK difference that we have in many similar words in both English and German, whereas in English you'd rather use a C, in many German cases you'd rather use a K instead. Let's continue with the second verse. Sie trinkt in Nachtclubs immer Sekt. Korrekt. Und hat hier alle Männer abgecheckt. Im Scheinwerferlicht ihr junges Lächeln strahlt. Sie sieht gut aus und Schönheit wird bezahlt. Two interesting words you guys may relate to simply by hearing or reading them as English speakers, Nachtclubs and abgecheckt. Nachtclub is an interesting German compound word which features the Anglicism club, which does not refer to the beating utensil in German though, but to a party location. Der Nachtclub, singular, die Nachtclubs, plural, the nightclub. For the masculine Anglicism noun, der Club, singular, die Clubs, plural, the club in the sense of discotheque. Similar to Nachtclub, but even more so the past participle form of abchecken, abgecheckt, shows how lots of Anglicisms get Germanized in a linguistic sense. The term still features the English check, to check something. It got Germanized by adding typical and fixed German prefixes. In this case, even two of them. Especially the prefix ge, ge, is typical for past participle forms of German verbs. Gegangen, gone. Geflogen, flown. Gesungen, sung. Past participles usually change the vowel compared to their infinite verbal forms as well. The English version goes like this. She's going out to nightclubs drinking just champagne, and she has been checking nearly all the men. She's playing her game and you can hear them say, she's looking good, for beauty we will pay. It's just a little detail, but the English just in line 1 could be comprehended as only, whereas the German version uses immer, always. Both are semantically related in a way, but it's still a difference if you only drink champagne, because that doesn't say anything about how often you do it, or if you always drink champagne, which doesn't necessarily say if you only drink it and nothing else. So, in a way, you may say that in the German version, the model in question may be a heavier drinker than she may be in the English version. But also, the German local preposition hier in line 2 only gets implied in the English second line. The third line is a bigger deviation from the German one, which once more shows when we take a look at my literal English translation. She always drinks champagne in nightclubs, correct, and has checked out all the men here. In the spotlight, her young smile shines. She looks good and beauty is paid for, or gets paid for. Meaning, men appreciate her beauty and hence tip her for it, for instance, or, I guess in this case, by those magazines. It's das Scheinwerferlicht, mostly singular, the spotlight, for der Scheinwerfer, singular, die Scheinwerfer, plural, the spot, literally the shine thrower, and das Licht, singular, die Lichter, plural, the light. Fair is fair, in a way, talking about linguistic efficiency once more. Das Scheinwerferlicht, even though it sounds nice, well, it's sort of redundant in itself, sort of self-repetitive, because when you have a shine, it is light automatically speaking. But we can, because it's a compound word and Germans love compound words, so. The noun das Lächeln, the smile, is a nominalized form of the verb lächeln. And it also allows me to explain another good-to-know German language hack for you, which is nominalized forms of German verbs are always neuter nouns. And it's die Schönheit, mostly singular, the beauty. And here's yet another German language hack for you. I told you this song is great for learning basic German language things. All German nouns that end in the suffix heit are feminine nouns. Last but not least, the third verse concludes the track. Ladies and gentlemen. Sie stellt sich zur Schau für das Konsumprodukt und wird von Millionen Augen angeguckt. Ihr neues Titelbild ist einfach fabelhaft. Ich muss sie wiedersehen. Ja, sie hat's geschafft. In a way, the song ends as it began. The dualism between the model as the observed object and the observer themselves, the lyrical I who reappears in the very last line and reaffirms their strong affection toward the model. The term das Konsumprodukt, the consumer product, always gave me food for thought when I first heard the track many years ago, also because it's quite an unusual German term, which almost sounds very economically technical, if that makes sense. I think it's meant as a reference to the magazine, which also correlates with the third line mentioning das Titelbild, Singular, die Titelbilder, Plural, the front cover, and it's das Magazin, Singular, die Magazine, Plural, the magazine. The lyrical eye may not even know her personally, but they somehow feel attached or close to her, even though the model may be known internationally, mentioned in line 2, and being far away physically speaking. The official English version is a bit milder in that regard. She's posing for consumer products now and then. For every camera, she gives the best she can. I saw her on the cover of a magazine. Now she's a big success. I want to meet her again. I want to meet her again seems comparably more distant to me, but that's my personal preference to some degree, I guess. The German verb müssen equals to must, and the English to want equals wollen in German. The muss, first person singular, nominative, indicative, active, also appears in my literal translation. She puts herself on display for the consumer product and is gazed at by a million eyes. Her new cover is just fabulous. I must see her again. Yes, she has made it. I'd say to want something is quite direct, but it's still a bit weaker than saying I must. TLDR, it's a cool song by Kraftwerk. And if you want to find out more about Kraftwerk as a band and what makes them interesting, and also how influential they were for the electronic music scene, check out this video right here. Thanks for watching, everyone, and see you next time. Definitely, I'd say. Tschüss und bis zum nächsten Mal.